I think is quite reasonable. So let's see what the public of Auckland have to say to this. Thank you.
Okay, just before I get Councillor Walker to speak, are you meaning that targeted rate to be a local targeted rate?
I mentioned examples, so there's slight variations between local boards, of course, because have different populations. The easiest one would put a regional targeted rate, so everyone was paying the same. If perhaps the option could be there for a local one, if that wanted to be truly reflective of the cost for each local board area. Either way, it doesn't amount to very much money. $3 to $5.
No, but the subtle,
per year.
Yeah. The subtle difference is, sorry, just for information, if you sort of multiply, say, 350, or by 21 boards, that's about 7 million. If it was to go.
No, $3.50. I think we're talking about.
No, he's talking about
but he mentioned 350,000, 400,000, or 470. It could cost up to 6 or 7 million if it was to be introduced across all the boards as a council proposal. But if it was a local targeted rate, then it's up to the local board to decide, the people in that community to decide whether they want to do it.
And that is consistent with what we have allowed in terms of the letter of expectation to Auckland Transport for those activities that local boards actually want to pick up themselves.
As it stands, the local boards just have to come up with a big lump sum. A number of local boards that are very strongly wanting this can't afford that from their own local budgets. And I would say that this is entirely consistent with our policy, which says to empower the community to manage weeds in accordance with the policy. So throwing that back to local communities. As I said, this is for consultation. One of the benefits would be able to hear what individual communities say, but I would suggest that there be an overwhelming response to this right across Auckland.
Councillor Wayne Walker, Councillor Hulse, Councillor Simpson, Councillor Fletcher.
At the very least, this would enable people to exercise their opinion in principle. We know that the cost across the region, the claim savings were about $950,000 a year for the shift from mechanical edging to chemical edging. That's less than half a cup of coffee per year per ratepayer. It's absolutely incidental. We know that it's not just around the chemical aspect, it's around the aesthetic aspect as well, and improving a level of service, because people don't like to see the unsightly sprayed areas that are not only damaging potentially to health but aren't desirable to look at. So it's also about a level of service that many local boards and many residents would like to achieve. Putting this up also gives the officers some opportunity to do some work on this exercise, so we've got some choices, because so far we as councillors and local boards have had precious little choices to operate on. It's an entirely pragmatic thing to consult on and would receive widespread support.
Councillor Hulse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do understand how critical this issue is, and having spent quite a lot of time talking to Hannah Blackmore and talked to her again today, I think we do just, however, need to deal with this in a slightly more managed way. I've got some recommendations that I would like to put forward by way of an alternative to these recommendations. I'll leave it to you how you wish to deal with that. I wasn't too sure whether this issue would come up today or on Thursday. I'm going to recommend that and note that significant funding reallocations are not within the scope of the annual plan process. This is definitely more an LTP process. That we endorse our glyphosate reduction targets within the current budgets. That we express our support for the continued implementation of the weed management policy. Our community have made that absolutely clear. And that we recommend a review and consultation of the allocated funding take place through the LTP. We've got, everyone's flinging numbers around with the greatest of respect to all of us. I mean, I've heard 18 million quoted, so I think we just need to have a bit of a breath and have a look at this sensibly. I'm also going to recommend that we have a small group, perhaps appointed by the mayor, to just have a look at this in the slightly longer term, because I think it's going to take some smart thinking. We've got the issue of the contracts that are currently being let. We need to give our community some reassurance that they fit the current management policy. We need to look at what we can genuinely do with our local boards and what that funding entails, and then we need to look at what we can do within current budgets. So I'm not going to support rushing out with this. I don't think we're ready to do this yet, but I do think it's a huge concern to our community and should be dealt with sensibly. So I'll put these, I'll hand these recommendations over. I think we can do better than doing something a little bit knee-jerk.
And do you have a second, councillor Holt?
Second.
Second, councillor Filipana. Okay, and just so we're aware of how I will deal with this when we do the amendments, we will do councillor Simpson's, we will do councillor Watson's, we will do councillor Hols's if councillor Watson's is lost. However, it also, they could be considered to be separate too. Councillor Darby and then councillor Casey.
I'm wondering,
Sorry, councillor Fletcher.
And
No, I can.
Councillor Simpson is at the top. Sorry, we're all high tech up here. Councillor
Mr.
Simpson.
Chairman.
Councillor Fletcher.
My comments are probably to John and Wayne. I totally support you with this. Having been a local board chair, I have been in a situation where the governing body has put an amendment up and then you have to sell it to your community. The problem I have is that we don't yet have all the information that we require to actually talk to our communities about. And so I would suggest that we wait a year. And I know it's a year, but I'm not convinced that every local board would actually have all the financial details around what it would cost you, what it would cost them, and how it would work. So I think the concept is really, really good. I also take Councillor Hols's point on the annual plan as being the right time for this. And and it's not. The LTP is the right time. Sorry, double negative. I do believe the LTP is the right time, and I think the message that we have to be very clear is if we run with potentially Councillor Hulse's, and I've just heard them for the first time, so we're not collaborating or anything, is that the message does go back to the people who are putting this forward that we're not saying no, we're just saying that we need all the information. And one of the trickiest things for us as councillors is that often it's the local boards who actually have to sell some of these local on-the-ground stuff, and we haven't got all the bits and pieces in place for that. And so just to protect our shared governor colleagues, the local boards, I would say we need to do that work around that first. So to that end, I would support using it as part of the LTP discussion.
Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure that when we come to these amendments, we can have the opportunity to resolve. This has been an ongoing issue since the very beginning of council in 2010, because Legacy Auckland and Legacy North Shore did have a chemical-free spray, and it's been one of those issues, along with berms, that I think has been a big distraction for Auckland Transport. And I really welcome the opportunity that communities potentially will have today through their local boards to actually look at perhaps some of these things shifting. Mr. Chairman, because I was the mayor that introduced the business differential in Auckland City, I've always watched this very closely, and the 2% that I signed up to, I actually canvassed the issue around the business differential. So for me, I'm supporting the foreshadowing by Greg Sayers of the 2%. I'm also a little unhappy at the process around the targeted rate for the visitor levy. You're aware that I've got quite strong views on how that should be, and I just wonder that we could tighten that up somewhat. I'm not sure that I'm a lone voice on that, but I would like to see that is tightened somewhat further. But I don't want to delay things. It's now nearly 6 o'clock. I think I can just express my vote accordingly and look forward to further debate on Thursday.
Thank you. Councillor Darby.
thanks. Look, I have some sympathy for the amendment put by Councillors Watson and Walker, and then I'm hearing Councillor Hols's also, I think, was moved. We've got a couple of amendments on the table. We don't have any official advice on this at the moment. It's late in the day. I'm just wondering if there's a willingness from both parties to refer this to the governing body meeting so we actually can be better informed on moving forward, because I'm struggling to be able to lend support to Councillor Watson or Walker's motion because it's just coming to me fresh. So, question, is there a willingness to put this through to the governing body and at least get some official information? We don't have anything at the moment.
Must have not been there.
Yeah, we're willing to.
We had a full discussion in October, or was it September, on this question? A long discussion.
Sorry, that's my question. My question.
September.
I'm just saying we don't have any officials here, and I can feel the lateness of the day, and I'm hearing a willingness to defer to the governing body.
Well, I'm looking at the mover and seconder of the first resolution relating to this.
Yeah, well, we did raise it last week, and we were told that information was going to come back, but I'm quite willing to delay to Thursday if that meets some of the councillors' concerns with regards more information.
And that's for both, because I'm saying the same to Councillor Hulse's, because I think we need to examine that as well, you know, against the background of our weed management policy and where we've got to in earlier decision making.
Well,
So just to clarify, the recommendations that I've put forward have been prepared in collaboration and in conjunction with our staff and with Dean Kimpton, Barry Potter and the environmental team. I'm happy to wait. In fact, I had hoped that this would come up on Thursday, and I was going to put the recommendations up on Thursday. The alternatives came up and I had this ready just to make sure that we covered the point of happy to wait till Thursday, but the advice that I have from our staff, which is backed up by quite a large report, is that this is the preferred way to go.
Certainly is for the staff, yeah.
It's also, I guess, as a pragmatist, I'm very keen that A, we stick within budget, B, we stick with what's doable, and C, we give our community a genuinely informed opportunity to discuss this with the correct facts.
So we're both willing to wait to Thursday then, Mr Chair.
We absolutely are.
I don't, just
You
sorry,
cannot
whispered in my ear is still the fact, though, that my understanding is it's going to be pretty difficult for any sort of tight, sensible financial figures to come back and separating this from parks, etc., from the whole spray program.
So sorry, Mr Chair, I mean, I've got this document that I can provide that was supplied last time that went to the additional cost, so I don't know if other members have got it or not, but I've got it here, so I'm willing to make that available because that's what specified each specific local board area, the cost of doing this.
Okay, I was only just passing the information, but if Councillor Hulse and Councillor Filippano are happy to park it till Thursday, then so be it.
It's more than just the locals, it's the
But
whole.
but you don't need to make a definitive answer on that because I have Councillor Casey and Mayor Goff and then Councillor Filippano. And then we can just come back to that question on
Oh, I didn't think the amendment far enough. I'd like to see Aucklanders spray-free with exceptions where you want to spray. I was willing to talk to the amendment, but I'll save it till Thursday.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr Chairman. I don't think we achieve much by putting it off till Thursday, frankly. This I know it's been debated by council before. I made a very clear statement during the mayoral campaign, and that is that I would follow an evidence-based approach. My problem is I've read through all the evidence that council officials have given me, and there are some key things that we need to take into account. The first thing is, I'm not sure, I haven't seen John's figures. I'm sure he's putting them forward in absolute good faith, but I'm told that the figures may be 18 million. If we are to take out chemical sprays. $18 million is a serious amount of money, and I don't know where it's going to come from. And I'm never prepared to support anything that involves that sort of level of expenditure without knowing how we're going to fund it. Secondly, I would have thought that a decision of this nature is sufficiently important that we make sure that we have got the facts at our fingertips as far as we can, and that the debate is a properly informed debate.